We have some big news to discuss today as a new report has dropped linking the Toronto Maple Leafs to a very good defenseman. And this report is saying that the Leafs are pursuing a pretty big trade to acquire this guy. So we're going to break down the exact report and discuss who that is in this episode, as well as Timothy Lilligren. We have a bit of a surprising update on him and his future in Toronto. So you're going to want to stay tuned for all that on this episode because that report might surprise you a bit. Before we do, if you're a part of the 80 or so percent who are not subscribed to the channel, make sure to hit that button. We are on the road to 11,000 subscribers. You guys have been crushing it. And Darius, let's just dive right into it. A lot to discuss today. A couple of new reports that have dropped in. One of these guys, which is Mario Ferraro, the Leafs were linked to back at the trade deadline. We did a couple videos about him. We were saying like he would be a very good fit for this team. And now a report has dropped that the Leafs are actively pursuing a trade. This won't be free agency. This will be a trade for the defenseman. You can see here the Leafs are among teams believed to have strong interest in Mario Ferraro, with their interest dating back to the middle of the season. The Leafs had their eyes on Ferraro and Sharks forward Luke Kunin during the season, and it's possible that Lilligren will circle back to both this offseason, but given the competition, he might need to move quickly. Darius Ferraro is a guy, again, we've discussed it countless times way back at the deadline, makes a ton of sense for the Toronto Maple Leafs, and shout out to Jay Fresh. He didn't have a great year last year, but there's a lot of trade talk regarding Mario Ferraro, and you can see his projected WAR, which we'll get into in a second, but I just want to get your thoughts on Ferraro in general right now and how he's kind of been pursued by the Leafs for a while. Wasn't great last year, but I don't think it would take too much to get him. But reports are saying not only are the Leafs pursuing the defenseman, there are multiple teams right now actively trying to acquire Ferraro from the Sharks because, quite frankly, the Sharks are pretty terrible.
Yeah, and I think if you can bring up his JFresh chart again, I think a lot of those numbers have to do with him playing on the Sharks. I think he had a pretty decent season on that team, right? And that was a very common occurrence in a lot of the players we were talking about at the trade deadline, whether it be Anaheim, San Jose, right? Especially Mario Ferraro, which we talked about at the deadline too.
Yeah.
So I think he had a decent season. And, you know, if you go through what Sharks fans think too, he had a really good year. A lot of people were like even comparing him to Erik Karlsson in a way, more of a meme way, not like literal. But he had a pretty decent season. In terms of cap, he makes just over $3 million until the end of the 2025-26 season. So again, not that bad at all if you wanted to bring him on. I just wonder what a trade looks like. I wonder what San Jose would really be looking for in that scenario, because I don't see them having really any incentive to move off of this player besides getting a pretty good return. So he would be useful on the Leafs. I do definitely think that, but again, he's not a right shot defenseman, so it's not anything I'm, you know, overly surprised or excited about. But he could be, you know, a welcome addition to the blue line. But I think I'd rather a guy like Edmondson, if you can re-sign him with the playoff experience, a little bit older. Mario Ferraro is still pretty good, and he would be all right on the blue line. But just not my number one choice. But I wouldn't be mad if, you know, they don't give up something like a Nick Robertson for him or something like that, right? If they make a deal, that makes sense because it's a pretty good cap hit at the end of the day.
Yeah, and again, you look at the JFresh chart, and the issue, not the issue, but something to keep in mind is that obviously is going to be it'll be a trade, not a free agent. So you're going to have to give up some asset for him. We can discuss that. But again, he's only 26 years old. He's not a right-handed shot defenseman. If he was, there would probably be even more interest about him. If you're unfamiliar with Mario Ferraro's stats and kind of what he does this year, or last year, sorry, 21 points, 78 games. He averaged 23 minutes a game, time on ice. Now, most of that is attributed to the fact that the Sharks have a terrible blue line. They're pretty bad at everything. But Ferraro is young. He is under control for another year at about a $3.2 million cap hit, as the JFresh chart showed. So I think it does make sense for the Leafs to at least think about it. And there's been so many reports about the Leafs pursuing so many defensemen. And Brad Lilligren spoke about how he wants to augment the blue line. It seems like the blue line is going to be drastically different than the start of last season. Especially, you know, they brought back, or they traded for Edmondson. I would like to bring him back, and I agree with you. I think I'd rather Edmondson as a left shot defenseman versus Mario Ferraro, especially because you have to give up assets. But Ferraro's younger, and he could be a part of the future. And you're looking at, from the Sharks' perspective, per David Pinata, Mike Grier and the San Jose Sharks are open to trading him. And there's some other teams that are interested in him, being the Predators, the Flames, the Hurricanes, and the Blackhawks. So the Leafs are going to have to do some outbidding here. I don't know if you have any proposed potential trade of who could be going the other way. Maybe Nick Robertson. Maybe it's time to move on from him. Maybe the Sharks should offer him some more playing time higher up in the lines, get him a chance to get going. But I don't know. I don't think it would take too much. The issue is with all these players and teams, all the teams that are interested in him, could be a bit of a bidding war. I don't think it'll reach super high levels, but I think it could definitely be an interesting trade if the Leafs manage to outbid these other teams. I don't know exactly who the center package will be, but I can't imagine it'd be too much. Any quick thoughts before we move on to Lilligren?
Yeah, I think he's a great player and he could be useful on the Leafs. I just don't know if you're the Leafs if you want to go this route because I think you can make a bigger splash with your defense. And like you said, Brad Living, I don't think he likes the defense the way it is. And even coming into last season, he was kind of handcuffed and he just got there. I think he has bigger plans for this blue line. So I don't think he's going to go this route. I think other teams can outbid the Leafs too. And it's not like it would go, super high, like you said, in a different direction, right? So still a useful player, very young, under control for another year. Like you said, I think his stats are skewed because he plays on the Sharks, so he would be useful. I just wonder what that left side looks like for the Leafs if you were to sign a guy like this. It doesn't, it's not, very good, right? You're not looking at a Stanley Cup winning left side there on the blue line. So I'm not sure it works out for them.
I agree. Let us know in the comments what your thoughts are on this. Now let's move on to Lilligren here. See this article by Joshua Cloak saying Nick Robertson, Timothy Lilligren, and more examining the Maple Leafs restricted free agents with contract comparables and future roles. Now we'll get into the exact kind of quote that comes out from this. So this is from Joshua Cloak via The Athletic, or via The Athletic. It says, it sounds like there hasn't been much dialogue between the Leafs and Lilligren's camp over his contract. The Leafs are likely waiting to see how free agency unfolds. Once they know what kind of pieces they can add, they'll likely be able to decide where he fits in their lineup, if he fits in their lineup. So, Darius, this is an interesting one. It seems like there's not much dialogue going on between there. He had a very weird season. I'll get into his stats in a second, but we're talking about defensemen. Lilligren's a guy that at times showed flashes, of, is he even an NHL, not necessarily an NHL caliber player, but is he going to fit in the Leafs' plans going forward? Same with Nick Robertson, which we'll have a video on in the future. What are your thoughts on this report that there hasn't been much dialogue there between the two sides?
Yeah, I just don't know if he makes sense for the Leafs anymore. And again, he's an RFA, so they still have him under control. So whether they want to qualify him or whatever that looks like, if they want to sign him to a new contract, which I believe his camp would probably want, he only made 1.4 million on his last deal. I don't see him getting much more of a raise. I think he's a very good player. He's an NHL caliber player for sure. But at his age, and with the stats he put up, I'm just not sure if there's anything more there. We thought he was going to be a really, really elite defenseman. Really, that's what he was talked about in his draft year and just before. And I know he got sick, but since then, he hasn't really taken too many large steps. And now, like I said, at his age, I wonder if he is just what he is at this point, right? And if he fits in with the Leafs. Again, a right shot defenseman, and maybe he can play lower in the lineup, but then in times where, he's in the playoffs, like we saw this year, he's getting roughed up and it feels like teams are targeting him a little bit and putting it in his corner for that reason, right? So I just wonder if he, meshes with the Leafs plans going forward again. I could see them re-signing him,
Yeah,
and maybe moving on from him, like a sign and trade or qualify him, something like that. But just based on his age, stats, stuff like that, I just don't know if he fits into the lineup. But I'm not surprised there's no rush as well with that quote, because he's under control. It's an RFA contract expiring, so I don't think there is a rush. I think they want to see how free agency goes and how they can rejig their blue line and move from there. Do we use this player or do we move on, right?
yeah, and again, I just showed you his stats there. I'll show him again. 23 points, 55 games, like really not bad at all. Probably around 35 points over a full season. He's only 25 years of age. Like, they're going to want to, I think, retain the asset. Maybe I'm sure some team would give some sort of value for a guy like Timothy Lilligren, who's shown flashes of being a really elite defensive defenseman. At times can be good, at times can be bad, but at 25, there's some room there for him to grow, and kind of makes sense that there's no rush between both sides because he is an RFA. No other teams are coming in, biting at the tail to grab Timothy Lilligren right now, knowing that he is a restricted free agent. So it's going to be interesting. Let us know in the comments, would you want the Leafs to bring back Lilligren? And if so, on what kind of deal? And also, let us know what your thoughts are on Mario Ferraro and I think he'd be a good fit. That'll wrap it up. Let us know in the comments all that. Make sure to hit the subscribe button. We'll see you soon.